Welcome back to another episode of JATalks. My name is Jasam, and for today, we will be talking about oil. Well, the possibility of oil being discovered in Jamaica. But first, intro first, and then we'll be right back. All right, so now we're gonna be discussing oil and the potential or the possibility of oil being in Jamaica. And so I had to gather my information first. Everybody has been talking about this. News first broke when Daryl Vaz stated that there's a possibility of oil. They would have found traces of it. Let me get the full report actually. So they actually found butane actually and propane. And so this is the possibility, and because they found traces, so essentially what they would have done is like you're doing a massive X-ray in the water, and so because of that, they would have found possibility. Um, I think Dara Vaj have stated that he is cautiously optimistic. And so because he's cautiously optimistic, because again, this no prove nothing. Yes, this would have garnered the attention of more persons, but it's still no prove nothing. You understand? And so it is important that we gather the full facts and the evidence first before we proceed. And that is good. That makes sense. You have to be solid. You have to be wise. Now, a lot of persons may be excited about this because they're saying to themselves that you may be or we would have the possibility of being the next Guyana, because Guyana currently in the Caribbean and also in the world is one of the fastest growing economy, not just in the Caribbean, but the world on a whole. And so a lot of Jamaicans may think that, or I guess a lot of Jamaicans are thinking that, hey, you know, the possibility of oil is going to happen, and when should that happen, then we'll be rich, or we're going to have more opportunities, and finally we're going to become a first world country. And while that is possible, there are a lot of things that we have to take into consideration first, right? And so there are both pros and cons towards this actually. I want to go through the pros and the cons of this, and this is where, because I would have indicated in previous videos that I'm actually a consultant as well, even though I would have spoken mostly on current affairs, for example, the J Face situation or Cardi B or whatever. I also speak about policies and economic developments that are taking place. And so, for the first time on this channel, I am going to put on my consultancy hat. I would have gathered some information as well. I had to do some research, my own research in this before I would have decided to come and make my presentation basically on what is taking place. So first off, right off the bat, I want to speak about um so the oil situation. Let us say they confirm that they have oil, because it has been said that there's a possibility that we have at least 7 billion barrels of oil. And again, that sounds nice, right? I believe Guyana has 11 billion barrels of oil, and so it sounds wonderful that you have we the possibility is there that we have 7 billion barrels of oil. But I want to point out that I'm going to go to the pros and cons, and I'm going to start off with some cons. So first of all, if oil is found tomorrow, it doesn't mean that automatically we're rich. It doesn't mean that automatically um we're going to have money like that. No. As a matter of fact, if oil is found and confirmed tomorrow that, hey, we have the 7 billion oil and we're ready now to start drilling. First of all, they can't do the drilling as yet because it takes a process. Um, there are different processes that you have to go through and logistics that you have to go through prior to selling oil. And I feel like a lot of persons don't know that. That process that you have to go through will take at least 10 years, 7 to 10 years, roughly, give or take, before. What that means is that the political cycle of the Jamaica Labour Party is every 5 years. Election is going to be called before oil is sold in Jamaica. We may change government. The PNP may be the government in charge. You never know. But election is definitely going to be called before oil is sold in Jamaica, and there are different stages. So first of all, we have the truth wall, right? The truth wall stage is actually from 1 to 3 years. So that's the stage that we're at right now. So now that we have found smoke, which is the hydrocarbons, the company must decide by later in 2026 if they will spend 50 to $100 million to drill one test hole. This will, and also what will happen is that this is the only way to know if there is an actual liquid, if there's actual liquid there or just gas. You understand? So we have to confirm. So basically, what they did was like an X-ray, right? A massive X-ray of the seabed to see if there is a possibility. Now we got the possibility. That's where we are at right now. It will cost them roughly 50 to 100 million USD to drill, and that's a test drill. That is not an actual drill. That's a test drill. Now after the test drill takes place, so the test, I recall Dalva stating that the first drilling that would take place will be late 2027 or 2028. That would be the test drill. All right, and so after that, no, we have to do the appraisal and FID. That's another 3 to 5 years. So now, if they hit oil, they have to drill 3 to 4 more wells to see how big the pool is. Investors won't build a platform until they are 100% sure it's a multi-billion-dollar barrel field. This ends with the final investment decision, and that's basically the go or no go movement. So after, so the first drilling is going to take place according to Dalvas. The first drilling would take place come um late 2027, 28, and then afterwards, which is for the 50 million to $100 million, and then afterwards they have to drill more. So after them find so yes, there's oil, they have to do 3 to 4 more drills to confirm how much oil is there. All right. So that's another thing. So we have 1 to 3 years, and then we have 3 to 5 years, and then after that, now we have the engineering and the FPSO construction. That is 6 to 9 years. So basically, what happens with this now? Offshore Jamaica is deep, right? You can't just build a rig rather. You need a floating production storage and offloading FPSO vessel, essentially a floating factory. These take years to build in places like Singapore or Korea, and then it is towed in the sea towards Jamaica. So to build this in Singapore or Korea, which is on the other side of the world, and then carried all the way to Jamaica. Because here's the thing, Jamaica's seabed is not the same as Guyana's seabed, is not the same as any other country's seabed. So, any country or that would have had oil in their seabed, the FPSO is built specifically for that seabed because again, everybody's seabed different, right? And then the drilling will confirm the go or no go as well. So remember the first. So we have the truth wall, we have the appraisal and FID, we have the engineering and FPSO, and we also have the first oil, right? Which is going to be 10 years from now. So We're at the engineering and FPSO stage, the floating production, storage, and offloading stage, which takes another 6 to 9 years to do. Um, that's going to take a while. And then finally, you have the first you have the first year or 10 years now, the first oil. So realistically, even with the success of today, we are looking at 2020, 2035 to 2027 before a single barrel is sold commercially. So between year 2035 and 2037. Remember, we said Vision 2030. Bruce Gordon would have had Vision 2030, which is less than 5 years from now. Um, 2035, I'll be 40. You understand? A lot of things are going to change and take place within then. So we have to look at it from the perspective of it takes roughly up to 10 years basically before we can sell oil. I believe, and again, I stand to be corrected, but Guyana, they would have discovered oil from about 2014, 2015, and I really just know they really start sell oil. You understand? Same thing. It takes a while to develop that. So we would have to wait. Another situation is we want to talk about is the Dutch disease. No, what is the Dutch disease? All right, so the Dutch disease basically when Jamaica starts to sell oil internationally, there's going to be a high demand on the Jamaican currency. When there is a high demand on the Jamaican currency, things are going to expensive. You see, there are certain economies that flourish in Jamaica because of Jamaica's currency being low. I'll give you an example: the BPO industry. The business processing outsourcing industry is an industry that flourishes because Jamaica's dollar is low. The value of Jamaican dollar is lower than the US. Obviously, the reason the clients and these major corporations would have left the US and gone to poorer countries, Jamaica, the Caribbean, Africa, is because they are able to pay us cheaper. We're being paid $3 to $5, that's so if you're getting paid like 450, do the exchange rate, or 485 or 500, do the exchange rate, they're like $3, 350, right? Remember, I said them up here, they have to pay their employees in the United States like $12 an hour, and you are able to pay us $3 to $5 an hour. You can so essentially they pay what you would pay a US agent. You can divide that by three or divide it by two and pay Jamaicans. And so if Jamaica's currency becomes um rises basically, you would think that, oh my gosh, it's going to be good for me, because let's say you have $50,000, your purchasing power increases, and yes, that is good. However, you also have to look at the fact that, okay, then, well, a lot of persons are going to lose their jobs, because if at the same pay, we're going to pay regular Jamaicans versus paying in the United States. Might as well me just keep them in the US. What's the point of coming to Jamaica and paying Jamaicans if it's the same price me I gonna get for paying the employees in the US? So the BPO industry business would suffer immensely. Also, as well, the cost of goods and services would go up internationally on the exporting market. So because Jamaica's currency is low, things are cheaper. Our goods and services that we export internationally, or exported, that's redundancy, but our goods and services that we export would become more expensive. And so obviously when that becomes expensive, people are going to find the cheaper route. People are going to look for cheaper countries to purchase the goods and stuff services from. So for example, again, the agriculture industry would suffer. So the black gold, which is the oil, will basically cancel out the green gold, which is agriculture. Agriculture is already suffering, or struggling rather. It's doing it's a guan, but in a really and so to know with oil coming in now, Basically, it would destroy it because eventually the local Jamaican farmers will not be able to compete internationally. We already are struggling to compete internationally, and now the cost of our produce would be increased, so therefore they're not going to want to purchase from us. They're going to want to purchase elsewhere. So that's another thing. The tourism industry would suffer as well, again because of the rising dollar. The tourism industry is going to suffer as well. The cost of booking a hotel room is going to be expensive. When that happens, we're going to have less visitors coming to Jamaica. And if less visitors are coming to Jamaica, then um, they're going to go places. Remember, Jamaica, yes, Jamaica is known for its tourism, but Jamaica is not the only country in the Caribbean that is known for tourism. As a matter of fact, Jamaica is not even the yes, Jamaica is ranked one of the top destinations in the Caribbean for tourism, but Jamaica is not the highest for tourism. There is Dominican Republic, there is Puerto Rico, there is Turks and Caicos, there is like the ABC Islands. There are various different locations that you can go. You do not need to come to Jamaica for tourism. You understand? People have options. So what is going to happen? The cost of our rooms are going to get so expensive that it's going to push people out. Now, well, I'm going to go to the pros. But yes, so that's another thing that would basically affect us negatively. We also want to look at the corruption index as well. Jamaica's corruption index is also another problem as well, right? If it is that you are heavily dependent on oil, and because what we need to understand that oil is going to require a lot of skilled workers, and oil pays a lot of money. It's similar to bauxite. I don't know if you know this, or well, a lot of persons would know this, but some persons would may not know. But for those who don't know, like if you're working for a bauxite company, you get paid a lot. Money is in it for persons who work directly for bauxite companies. So if you work for Alpart, I don't know like bauxite company then, but for example, I'm going to use Alpart. If you work for Alpart company, people normally drive big car to make money, and so this will be bigger, by far bigger than bauxite. And if that is the case, what is going to happen is that it is going to pull a lot of Jamaica's working class there. So therefore, again, a lot of our other sectors who have skilled laborers in there, they're not going to want to work there. It's going to pull them towards the oil industry, because that is where the money is. You're going to be paid, the possibility of being paid 3 to 4 times working in the oil industry is going to be there. Why would I want to work for you when I can work in the oil industry? You understand? So, certain industries would suffer again because of that, because their best, brightest, it's like an internal brain drain. So right now Jamaica is suffering from an external brain drain, where Jamaica's most talented and most skilled citizens are leaving for North America, UK, and Canada. And so right now, should the oil, let's say we're producing oil tomorrow, Jamaica's most skilled people would flock it basically, because it pays 3 to 4 times or 5 times more than what they're getting. So that is how the other industries would suffer as well. We also want to look at the environmental factor as well. The drilling area, the drilling area, Walton Morant Basin, is near the Pedro Banks. And so this is the most vital fishing ground and coral ecosystem. One drill could devastate our blue economy as well, and our international reputation as a green destination. So, and that's another thing as well. And what if, for example, there's an accidental spill as well? For example, so remember, they need to have very powerful hoses to go down to the seabed and to access and to drill. There's a procedure of doing this, and this is why again it's gonna take the 6 to 9 years and up 10 years in total to really build a machine and build a floating equipment that will be able to drill safely, drill oil. Because what happens, that is very toxic to the environment, to the seabed, and if it is exposed, a lot of natural life, a lot of fishes would be destroyed. Remember, Jamaica, we do fish, as we have fishermen, and as a matter of fact, Jamaica's fisheries industry is actually overfished. We have to put in different laws in place to prevent, like we have off seasons that allows the fish to breed up again, to multiply again. And so imagine, what if, for example, there's an oil spill. Remember, we have, according to them, we have at least how many? 7 billion barrels of oil. What if a fraction of that is spilt? The devastation it would have on our blue economy and basically the tourism industry mash up right there. So, you understand? The seabed will become toxic to a lot of natural life. So, therefore, that's another thing that we have to take into consideration as well. In terms of the cons as well, we also have to look in at wealth inequality. Now, without strict oversight, oil often concentrates at the top, failing to improve the standards of living people, on average citizens, basically. That's another thing we have to concern ourselves about as well, because, um, and I'll use case in point right now. Now we're gonna subtract Melissa from the equation. I made a video back in August and I criticized the government because a lot of the times the government spoke about macroeconomics. The government would have spoken about all the good numbers and how debt to GDP was low and the crime rate was low and the poverty rate was low and the unemployment rate is low and all of these good things, and we have at the time we got BB rating, and oh my gosh, this is so good. And yes, on paper it is good, but the reality is people aren't feeling it. You understand? People are, so we have all of these good big numbers, but people aren't feeling it. You debt to GDP ratio doesn't matter when, yes, I have a job, but the job doesn't make any sense because basically the job I pay me for go back at work. We can't make ends meet. And so what we find, yes, even though there is a lot of employment or a lot of jobs, because everywhere I go, me say people say needed, workers needed. When I walk in Mandeville, them say workers needed for different store, Mr. Chin shop, everybody want people. Even make me I say vacancies. And when I look at that, first of all, it's the quality of jobs, right? So a lot of persons, even though there are jobs, there's a demand. What are the jobs that want people? A lot of the times, the jobs that are in high demand, correction, the jobs that want people pay the least. Wisynco, security. Well, let me not say Wisynco. I'm sorry. Let me say the entry level jobs at Wisynco specifically, right? Security, hotel worker, call center. It's normally an entry level job. You always see a lot of job fairs. And it's normally entry level jobs, and people are fed up and tired of these entry level jobs because they really aren't giving you a livable wage. You cannot make ends meet, and so when I am struggling to make ends meet, I can't pay my child's school fee. I can't pay my child's registration fee. I can't pay the light bill. I don't have the first month to buy rent or groceries. Yeah, come tell me about debt to GDP ratio. Me can't name debt to GDP ratio. That can't name. You understand? And so the fear is, again, you're a lot of people are looking at oil and oh my gosh, you're thinking that we're going to be rich, but then the possibility of us having two Jamaica is very looming and it's very there, where you're going to have people at the top making the money, and the politicians again, and everybody is going to be able to work in the oil industry. So just like how and everybody can work in the bauxite, a bauxite may say actually, for the bauxite industry. And so yes, bauxite factories or companies, they pay well, but everybody gonna get it. I remember selling links on Jamaica. You understand? Even though you're going to have a lot of educated persons and skilled people getting it into it, there are some persons coming up who will be educated, and then now they're at the work. And at the end of the day, I links on Jamaica. So There has to be a massive revamp, structural changes that needs to take place right now, or else we're still going to fail. A massive restructure of our current system that we have right now needs to take place, because if that does not happen, Jamaica is set to fail. We are set to fail because of that. You understand? So now that needs to be taken into consideration. A lot of people jump up and down, and you're so happy that, oh my gosh, we have oil, I'm going to be rich. Not necessarily. And I'm not trying to be pessimistic, I'm actually looking at all of the different cons and risks that are there. Not necessarily. You understand? All right, so we're going to look at the pros now. Um, so looking at the pros, right? We do have the end of wealth leakage. Now, currently, Jamaica is spending $2 billion annually, USD, by the way. We're spending $2 billion on on oil, on fuel. The JPS, so we can have light, so we can have gas in our car, for vehicle, and we also make plastic as well. We are spending 2 billion USD, and so obviously, if we're producing oil, there would be any need for that. You also want to look into the production and the manufacturing industry. Even though we don't know it's going to be a double-edged sword, rather, as I stated, but right now, a lot of the biggest challenge that the manufacturing industry and a lot of businesses in Jamaica are facing is that the energy bill is the highest, and when it reaches a particular threshold, JPS tends to double the charges on you. So a lot of persons may not understand, because you are a residential person, and so because you live, you pay like a $10,000 or $8,000 a month. You say, but light bill the high, because you have not passed a particular threshold. Right? If you look on your light bill, you'll see where it shows you the different threshold of energy usage. And when you pass a particular threshold of energy usage, you find out that your light bill is going to double, triple, quadruple. You understand? But a lot of residential people don't feel it because they're not using a particular threshold. One of the reasons I'd even add that Jamaica does not have aluminum. We have the bauxite industry, but we don't have aluminum industry, because in order to convert and to refine aluminum, sorry, bauxite to aluminum, it requires mass amount of energy. And if JPS is supposed to fund that, a lot of people naga have light. A lot of Jamaicans will not have electricity. If JPS were to fund electricity, fund the refining of electricity, of that is a full shimmy chat. If JPS was to fund the bauxite company that refines bauxite into aluminum, in that part, first of all, in that community, a lot of residents will not have light. It would be catastrophic. Jamaica currently use 4.5, we consume 4.5 terawatts of electricity, right? And I don't know how, but we know say it's high. It's almost, it's a couple hundred or a couple thousand megawatts. You have megawatts, you have gigawatts, you have terawatts. I think it's in the gigawatts in terms of um, converting bauxite to aluminum. It's in the gigawatts basically. So yeah, there will be some industries that will benefit, because you're looking at it from the standpoint of things are going to be low. So yes, as the residents, for residents, our light bill could be slash and a half. So for those who usually pay $10,000, would now pay 5,000 for light, and a lot of persons now would be, or would want to know, can buy what you call it again, AC, and then put it in the house, and not feel afraid or worry because the light bill are go low. That is nice, that is all good and all. But separate from that though, Um, Again, remember, I indicated that it is a double-edged sword, and it is a double-edged sword because remember, the bauxite industry is drowning out other industries as well, and so remember that because it increases the value of the local Jamaican dollar when we're selling things and we're exporting things in internationally, it's going to be expensive. So even though, oh my gosh, the cost of producing and manufacturing certain things will be lower, selling it still on the global stage is going to be a problem because Jamaican dollar is very high. It's very valuable now. So I mean, I know what to go. um, that's another thing that we have to consider as well. No, it is important. Another thing or a pro as well is debt eradication. Most definitely, Jamaica owes money, billions of dollars. I think to the best of my ability, and I need to get the information. But we owe 14 to 15, if not $15 billion USD in total, or 20 billion. No, no, it's less than the GDP. So like roughly $14 billion USD, around that. I could be wrong, and if I'm incorrect, please comment in the bottom and correct me. That I don't have the full figures, but it's roughly around that. And so, if you have continuous money, because right now the government gets its revenue from taxes, right? And so you'd get your revenue from the royalties for of the oil. And so, when that happens, we'll be able to basically eradicate our debt or significantly put a damp in it. That is actually a good thing as well. If it is that another good thing we need to point out as well, or a pro of this oil, if it is that we are responsible people, then we'll need to have what is called a sovereign wealth fund. Norway has this, Guyana has this. Normally, oil producing countries put this into play. So what normally happens is because we're going to have, when you get the oil and we start selling oil, another thing that could happen or would happen is the fact that you're going to have a bomb rush, a heavy load of US currency pumping into the economy. That stimulates corruption. That it You may think that is a good thing. In for an economy to be healthy, it needs to be steady. So you cannot jump from 0 to 100 like that. It rises up inflation. It destroys the economy. You would think that, oh my gosh, an influx of money is good. Yes, an influx of money is good, but in the sense of, for example, steadily increasing. So if I'm at zero and you drop and you go to 100 immediately, that would essentially crash the economy. The sovereign wealth fund, what it does, it creates an offshore account where the government puts that money. It's almost like it's basically like investment or saving. So the particular government puts it and invest it into like an account in a different country, and so because it's basically what what that is for. Remember, oil is finite, it's not infinite, and so eventually the oil is going to finish. It's going to be there for maybe 30, 40, 50 years, even 100 years, but eventually it will go finish, and so when it ends, you're not going to have anything left, right? So the purpose of the sovereign wealth fund is that when the oil ends, we're still going to have something, an insurance policy to fall back on. You understand? So that's another thing that we have to look at as well. Industrial goods. So another, what will definitely happen though, and the oil industry will definitely complement is the logistics hub. As a matter of fact, it will speed up the logistics hub because right now, yes, the government is pushing to have a logistics hub, and they have made a lot of strides for that. But then for example, we saw where Amazon went and set up their hub in Dominican Republic, and even though we would have primed ourselves to be able to have an Amazon center in Jamaica, they chose not to because here's the thing. Yes, we can set up ourselves in a way that we can expect the investment, but at the end of the day, the foreign direct investment, they're the ones who decide. So what we're trying to do is to attract people to come. It's almost like a flower that, is pretty and leaves off scent, a certain scent, to attract the bee to come and take the nectar so that it pollinates the flower. We learned this in biology class. That's basically what Jamaica is, and the Jamaican government is trying to do, where they are the flower and they are trying to ensure that Jamaica's ducks, all of our ducks are in a row so that we can attract the bees, which will be the investor to come and pollinate our industry and our economy so that we can grow. Apparently, well, unfortunately, not as yet. I don't know if it's going to happen, but at current, the bees, the biggest bee that would have come to the Caribbean garden was Amazon. And instead of pitching on Jamaica's flower in terms of our logistics hub that we are building, they settled for, when it's for Dominican Republic. They pitch for them flowers. And so, what I can at least say though is that what will happen with the newfound oil, we have an advantage. We have a wild card because Dominican on the isle. And so, because we have a wild card, we're able to use that advantage, and that would actually speed up the process in having more investors coming in terms of fully maturing our um that would actually fully maturing our logistics hub as well. So those are some of the cons that we, sorry, I keep on saying cons. We're talking about the pros. Oh my gosh. Um, Another thing I forgot to speak, the geopolitical situation as well is another thing as well. As we know right now, with the geopolitical, the war and with US and one mega foolish will take place, and oil prices are go up, we wouldn't have to worry about that because I guarantee you, Guyana doesn't have to worry about oil prices with the Strait of Hormuz being closed and all that foolishness. Guyana doesn't have to worry about it because Guyana has oil. What are you talking about? They don't have to worry about that. So that it provides that as well. That hedge of protection as well for them. There was a con that came to mind and I completely forgot. Um, I should have spoken about it, but I completely forgot about that con. But so those are the pros though that are there so far. I completely forgot the con, but yes, those are all of the pros that are there. Now here is my take. Again, um, because it's going to take more than 5 years. I'm not looking at that for the immediate situation. And so currently, what Jamaica needs to do or has to do is to look at alternative ways right now to serve the people now. Right, we have a lot of issues, and so the government has NARA coming up to roll out in terms of infrastructure, fixing roads, fixing water, and providing resilient infrastructure for Jamaicans so that if should a next category of hurricane come and wants to hit Jamaica, it will be in a better condition in terms of our economy. So, as a matter of fact, you know what? I feel like because the video is long, we are at what 30, well, it's more than that. It's going to be past 40 minutes. I feel like I should have a part two to this in terms of what we should do. But essentially, what I'm going to talk about though, in terms of, I'm going to give a brief um understanding of what we should do. Essentially, we need to focus on our education, right? And we need to train skilled people because it cannot be that we have a foreign company that is going to be using our resources and we are not paying the Jamaican labor market. So the Jamaican labor market needs to prepare ourselves and to be primed for that opportunity. So that's one thing. Two, we need to improve um the agriculture industry. We need to strengthen the the tourism industry. One of the ways, well, we are already doing that, and that's a part of NARA's program that the government is working on. In the tourism industry, we're looking into, or we're moving into the luxury tourism industry. I just remember the con, guys. I just remember the con. I'm gonna stick a pin there because I'm gonna go back to the con. I know I'm all over the place, and I do apologize. So, because of the geopolitical situation that is taking place right now, we have a case where a lot of Jamaicans, correction, a lot of people internationally are moving and are going to are planning on moving away from fossil fuel. Essentially, what is taking place with Donald Trump? If you look at the wars and the geopolitical tension that is taking place, you understand that energy independence is very much important. What this would have done is to highlight how dependent we are on energy. That is what it would have done. It highlights how dependent we are on energy. And because it is highlighting how dependent we are on energy, we're in a situation where a lot of countries are going to put policies in place so that they can find alternative sources of energy. So solar, wind energy, hydro energy, a lot of things, especially the developed countries, they are going to definitely put things in place in advance in their country so that they can be less dependent on energy, on oil. And remember as well, especially from an environmental perspective, the world is moving away from that as well, right? In terms of fossil fuel is fading out actually. 10 years, remember, it takes us 10 years to have fossil fuel, right? To be able to sell it. 10 years is enough time for developed nations to move away fully from fossil fuel. You see how China, to how fast China and Japan and them, the country, they move. You understand? So we have to look at that as well. So it you run the risk of we doing all of this investment and all of these things, and then what happens is that now the value of oil has significantly dropped. I'm not saying that 10 years from now, them nobody not gonna buy oil. People are still going to purchase oil, but because the value of oil is going to drop significantly, you find that you run the risk of operating at a loss instead of a profit. or or even if you're making a profit, it's not much. So that's another thing that we have to focus on and we have to take into consideration as well. That's another risk we have to look at as well because, again, people now are realizing that, hey, because of the situation with America and the different wars that is taking place, what happened with Venezuela, I don't want to be in that situation. I need to do things and put things in place so that when should something else happen regarding oil, we're sovereign. We don't need it, or we don't need as much, and it affect us. So that is the direction and the world is taking is going in right now. And I feel like this should have been found the same time when Guyana has found oil because we're in a predicament now. We're in a turning point where oil is basically gonna go out of style, and it's at that point we're about to sell oil. Eh? At that point, the irony. So it would suggest that we're running or we're too late, basically. So that's another con that we have to look into as well. So here's the thing, guys. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go do a part two to this because this definitely needs a part two. All right, and so thank you very much for staying me for this long, and we're definitely gonna do a part two. But before I even do that, also as well, my my blueprint is out as well. I wrote a 70-page blueprint. It was submitted to the Office of the Prime Minister. It was submitted to the Parliament Institute of Jamaica. And it was also submitted to Ambassador Audrey Marks. You also have the opportunity to having that as well because I go through, I speak about energy, I speak about housing, I speak about the digital economy as well, I speak about agriculture as well, and a lot of these things that are the risk that we have right now of facing the policy blueprint is what addresses it, and we don't, we, you see, I provide solutions, so we don't just look at problem solving or problem statements. Yes, we analyze the problem statements, but we also provide the solutions to the problem as well. So, link is in my bio to my Patreon account. I thank you very much for your support. I thank you very much for watching. Subscribe to the channel because guess what? I'm going to have more deep dive policy breakdown and takedowns. There's going to be a part two. Apparently, it seems as though we need to have a part two to this, so I'm definitely going to do a part two to this, and that is something that we're going to speak specifically about the pros and the ideas and the different mechanism and different things that we can put into place so that we can strengthen the economy, not just because of oil, because with or without oil, we need to be in a position to survive. We prior to this we didn't have oil and we were operating without oil, and so therefore we need to be able to operate without oil because again it may turn out that the, what they found don't make no sense or it's not viable or the terrain because the seabed is too deep or whatever the situation is. If there are some logistics that are taking place, it may not work out. And what if it doesn't work out? What are we going to do? So instead of looking at oil as a saving grace, we need to utilize, put ourselves into position and work in a way that we strengthen our agricultural industry, we strengthen our tourism industry, we strengthen our other industries so that they'll be able to handle the weight of the oil that comes. And even if the oil does not come, because we would have strengthened our other industries, the Jamaican GDP, the economy, the GDP per capita, and also the standard of living for the average Jamaica would have increased regardless. The importance and the aim is to, regardless of the outcome, we're still okay. That is the importance. That is the importance of what we're working for. And so, again, in my blueprint, I speak about that. It's fully detailed. And support my blueprint, support me. It is there on my page. Thank you very much for everything, guys. And always remember, please never forget that your independence is the foundation of your liberation. Have a blessed day.